Hey, what's up guys, Tasty Meat Chunks here, and Season 1 of Marvel Rivals is upon us. But a lot of really interesting stuff has happened with this season, biggest one of them being that all of the Fantastic Four are coming out in one season. But here's the thing. Alright, sorry, I won't make that joke. Only Mr. Fantastic and Susan Storm have launched for the game. And I'm gonna be honest here, it's looking like this is a 2 Vanguard, 1 Strategist season, which is awesome. No one's noticing Johnny Storm's nuts are jiggling in the wind! However, they are lying about one of the Vanguards and saying that Mr. Fantastic is a duelist instead of a Vanguard. Because this dude's entire kit is tank, let's be real. Anyways, let's talk about Susan Storm, because I feel like I'm just now really starting to get the hang of Mr. Fantastic, but I feel like I got a pretty damn good understanding of how to use Susan Storm.
I'm gonna kill myself. Can you stop? Almost killed the Magneto.
Hey, we're almost winning now. Oh, shit.
Oh wait, I'm the perfect character to go AFK with. I forgot.
Is she just like AFK you?
She's AFK invisible.
Now, on first glance, she might seem a little bit similar to other sort of supports in the game. The ranged attack that can hit multiple times, that does damage and healing, but her abilities are a little bit more nuanced than a lot of others. First off, they have penetration, so her primary fire can hit multiple enemies at the same time, or heal multiple allies, or heal and damage at the same time. This means that you are going to kind of want to think about this sort of similar to Luna Snow's Shift. To maximize your healing output, you want to line up either multiple enemies and allies at the same time. Now, these projectiles also come back, so lining up so that you're hitting on the way out and back is good. We also have 2 passives that we should talk about here. The first off is invisibility. I didn't even do that intentionally. I'm just that nice with it. While you are invisible, this is your way to heal. None of your other abilities are really going to heal you in any way. But if you are invisible, you will be healing. I guess that isn't completely true because if you put up a shield, you can technically heal from that too. There are 2 ways to go invisible on this character. The first one is just a passive by not taking damage or shooting or using abilities for some period of time, you will go invisible. Any ability you use will cancel that. The other way is through your double jump. Now you need to be careful because if you double jump while using abilities or shooting, you won't have this invisibility anymore. But if you use it without taking damage, shooting, or using abilities, it can put you invisible. Be really careful using this ability just for nothing, because while it is on a pretty short cooldown of 6 seconds, and it might sound like a good idea to use it to sort of get in and out of a fight, it is really your only escape option, so using it in this way can be pretty risky. The other passive that she has is her third hit is actually a bounce. So your third melee will actually move opponents. I've seen a lot of Invisible Woman players saying that you should pre-fire basically your first 2 melee hits. That way when you get into a sticky situation, you already have it on lock. But you do have to be careful with on this is you can save it up for a third hit, right? You can be ready for that. But more likely you're going to hit the first 2 shots of it, be waiting for your chance to hit it, and then, oh, I'm going to hit it now? Oh, I don't have it. So I wouldn't rely on this trick too much. You've got a pretty small window where you're actually able to hit the second portion of this. But much like most of the other characters we've talked about here, you can use this for animation canceling. So in melee range, you can actually be a pretty serious threat with your damage output. And then the second that you get low, you just instantly turn invisible and run away to your team. Let's talk about the rest of her kit. Now, your main utility that you're bringing to the team, aside from just ridiculous healing and survivability, is going to be your shields. Your shield has 300 HP, which isn't a lot, but on a support, that is pretty significant. I don't think I need to tell my Overwatch players why Brig was scary, and why a character that has a shield that not only shields, but also heals can also be scary. Another thing to note is that the shield recharges when you take it back, based off of how much health it needs. So if it is closer to 300, you can keep putting it up. As long as it isn't broken, there is no cooldown. But regardless of if you let the shield get broken or pull it back on low HP, it's going to be on the same cooldown regardless. So I wouldn't worry so much about letting your shield get broken as much as I would worry about maximizing its uptime before it breaks so that you can get as much healing off of it as possible. I'm not saying she's overpowered. just something to keep an eye on. The second part of the shield is it does do a pretty significant amount of healing. Now, a little bit of a tip that I tend to use with this ability, there are a lot of characters that can be kind of hard to hit with your heals. Things like Storms or Spider-Mans, or maybe you're just flat out of range of them for most of the time. The shield is something that you can put up and not have to stay in the range or close to them, or trying to track them for a longer period of time. And also that any enemies that pass through this shield are going to be slowed. Now, as for your other two abilities, these ones are kind of easy to understand. You've got a slow field that also sort of drags enemies in, as you can kind of see right here. It also does damage over time. It's also a pretty solid slow. I tend to just sort of chuck this into their front line so that I can sort of group people together and maximize my hits. As for your other ability, your force physics are going to have the ability to either pull enemies in or push enemies out. Pulling enemies in tends to be pretty solid, especially with things like tanks on their front line. It can also be used, of course, to get environmental kills. Little thing to notice about your shift is you can manually detonate this to pop it wherever you want. So let's say I want to like chuck it over a shield perhaps and then have it damage their whole team, but not damage the shield itself. I can maybe aim above like the strain shield and pop my orb so that it does the damage and starts sucking people in up there. It's not a crazy pull, like you can definitely fight it, but it is a solid slow to sort of hold people in. Now the last aspect of her kit is her ultimate. Her ultimate is a big area of effect that does healing, but it also makes anything inside of it invisible. If an enemy goes through the force field, they will also be slowed. Now this doesn't mean that it actually blocks any damage, so do not use this ultimate as a defensive ult to block things like Iron Man ult, or something like a Punisher ult that just does a ridiculous amount of damage. Its healing is only 165 healing per second. This sounds like a lot of healing, but it's less than both Luna Snow and Mantis ultimate. The main thing you want to use this for is for maybe a one ult trade, or a couple of ults that maybe don't do the most damage, or are reliant on being inside of your team. Now, the plus side of this ultimate is that you can put this ultimate wherever you want, which means unlike something like a Luna Snow ult where you have to be in the middle of the fight in order to get the value from it, you can play a little bit further back, or teammates can be behind it, cut off by the invisibility so that they're effectively invisible to the enemy team as well. And the slow means that it's a lot more beneficial to sort of even use it in a bit of a defensive context to slow and stop an enemy's push, especially while they're up ulting, and cut them off from their team. Also, really quick side note, what I'm doing right now is putting the shield on a teammate that is much more survivable while they push forward, not continuing to move the shield up with them because I'm solo supporting at this time, and using them as a way to put a shield where I'd like so I can utilize the shield. You're going to need to know the difference between a shield for you and a shield for your team to make this character the most effective. Now, if you are an enemy looking into this ult, you will see after images of your teammates kind of similar to Hawkeye's, but you won't be able to see your teammates one-to-one. So you can use this pretty aggressively too, to maybe cut off an isolated 1v1, or a situation where maybe a melee character is fighting 2 or 3 people that they shouldn't be, pop an ult on them, and now they basically have a Mauga Cage isolated 1v1. Now I know that when I say this character effectively has a Orisa pole, a boop, and a pole. A big cone of invisibility that in practice kind of functions similar to a Mauga Cage. An ult that is basically 2/3 of a Luna Snow ult that also makes everyone inside invisible and that she can play outside of. Perma Invis, a 6-second cooldown putting you into Perma Invis, and also a 300 health shield that she can put on anyone. It's probably going to be pretty easy to see why this character could become pretty strong as metas develop. Not to mention she has a passive with Mr. Fantastic giving her a 15% healing boost. This does not require the team up ability to give her the healing boost because it is an anchor bonus. This means she has it for the entire season. But her passive basically makes Mr. Fantastic unkillable, which seems like a great time to start talking about characters she plays best with. I have found that the Invisible Woman kind of plays the best with everyone, but specifically mostly characters that like to be in sort of short close range, bit more of a death ball style of play, and just sort of anything that lets her heals pass through and get their most value. I know this sounds like Brig a lot, or Baptiste, but I do think in practice, the Invisible Woman isn't as strong as her kit sounds. The healing shield is a little bit silly, but I found the best targets to stick healing shield on tend to be melee characters. Because the way that the shield applies to teammates is whichever way they are looking, the shield will apply in that direction. Also, because of the fact that the shield breaking or the shield staying up doesn't really have a benefit, the only time to really take the shield down is going to be when it is no longer useful. So let's say you put a shield down, your melee DPS or whatever passes through the shield and starts doing something else. Just keep reapplying the shield to them as they move, and they're basically fighting with a perma-mag bubble on them at all times, or a Doctor Strange shield in front of them. 300 health shield doesn't sound like a lot, especially when you compare it to Magneto's infinite health shield, but the fact that it has effectively infinite uptime means that this shield is really strong on melee characters or tanks in that situation. Because of this, I think that dive and brawlier comps are going to really be beneficial to her. But also with poke comps, she can be strong as well. I know you have seen clips of Punisher turrets getting shielded like this is Beta Bastion from Overwatch. And while I don't think that specifically is the best use of your shield, there's not really any harm in doing it. Shielding off a Hela or a Widow, a Hawkeye in your back that's trying to get damage off, instant value. Shielding off any of your teammates that are trying to hit an ultimate in those first few frames where CC can screw them over, huge. Shielding off a teammate that got ulted by something like Doctor Strange or Groot, awesome. Now it is important to mention that these are shields, which means melee will go through them, but this character is looking to be a pretty solid way to shut down a lot of long-range poke characters and also give a lot of resources to more close quarters brawl characters. So while I am saying that I think this character is good with just about everyone, I do think the characters that you kinda want to look out for are going to be mostly flying characters, because they're usually either going to be A, out of your range, or B, able to shoot over the shields, and number 2, melee characters. Because melee characters tend to have pretty large hitboxes, and if you get hit while invisible, you lose your invisibility. So characters like Magic, they can just follow whichever direction you jumped in while doing that, and hit an instant stepping disc into a swing, and you're immediately revealed and probably dead. Same thing with character like Iron Fist. Mr. Fantastic can just sort of wiggle his arm around and find you that way. Or Spider-Man can hit his punch because it has a hitbox the size of a small planet. I do think that just by virtue of this strategist bringing a lot of new tools to the table, especially things like pulls, AoE healing, and shields, there's a good chance that she could become very meta-defining for this season, but also all of her individual characteristics kind of rely on her to be in the fight, which puts her a lot more at risk than other characters. So if you are choosing to play her, I would be very careful with how you use your jump. I would remember that if you can get a shield on a teammate, it will also heal you, and that your ability to be creative with your pulls, your pushes, your shields, and your ultimate, while also min-maxing to line up as many allies and enemies so your heals get the most value on their boomerang, is going to be the best way to make this character work. I hope that you learned some important tips or tricks, or just how to better play this character. Let me know which character you want me to do down below. We have been playing an absolute insane amount of Captain America. So if you're thinking, I think I'm good on a Mr. Fantastic video, you know, I'm okay with that. I can make a Cap video. Because I gotta be honest, Cap is super slept on this season, I think. And as this season is looking to be a lot more tank heavy and Mr. Fantastic gets figured out and Wolverine becomes stronger, Captain America is that one tank that is going to be able to fight back against that meta. Anyways, hope you all have a fantastic week. And I will see you all while streaming this week or next week when we're talking about another character. I blocked 16,000 damage.
I did 22.
Is an invisible woman.
That, oh my god.